special seasonal review, and well, we're doing two movies today, and that is because we're doing the original Gremlins from 1984, which is definitely a bit of a festive classic. It has become that over the years and gets rewatched countless times. And then we're doing the sequel, which really isn't a Christmas movie, but we thought, hey, it's the sequel to Gremlins. There's only two movies, so we might as well do both of them, Gremlins. And then Gremlins 2, the new batch from 1990, which we'll get to later on. But first of all, original Gremlins, and a bit like Die Hard, if I explained the plot, it would be like I'm insulting you guys, because really everyone should know about the plot to Gremlins, but it's a more kind of family friendly entry in the subgenre of like creepy crawly knee high mistress, as some people like to call it. And yeah, it's set in a small town, which is very much like the small town from It's a Wonderful Life. So that's definitely a movie that gets referenced. And there's a few references like that, but you've got Billy, the lead character, a young guy who's coming up in this small town. He's got a crush on the local girl, Phoebe Cates, and his father brings him home a cute little cuddly friend for Christmas, like the permission of like the owner, like the Chinese guy, who warns him about the rules. So it sets up the rules, and then as the way of these things, there's like plot reasons why the rules aren't adhered to, and all sorts of chaos comes from that. So that is the setup for the original Gremlins. Rachel, I'm sure we've both seen this quite a few times, but what do you think about Gremlins?
I actually haven't seen Gremlins since I was a kid. I barely remembered the film. There were only like little bits and pieces here and there that I remembered. So for me, this was almost like watching a new movie because I didn't remember it. This movie... Stephen and I watched this together. This movie is so random. It is just so random. And parts of it, I think the first Gremlins, and the second one does this a little bit better, but I think the first Gremlins at times can suffer a little bit from genre whiplash. It's like 80% this fun family kind of mildly horror film, and then every so often it will pull something out that makes you go, what the hell? And it's just like really dark or like really messed up. So I found that angle interesting. I had fun watching this film. I mean, that's what it is. It's a fun film, you know. It doesn't have any deep characterization or any kind of like, I actually noticed that like the characters themselves don't even really have proper arcs. They're just kind of there getting swept away in the chaos, but it's fun. You know, Gizmo is just, the cutest thing ever. The whole movie, I was just like, oh my God, it's Gizmo. He's so cute. He's so tiny. Voiced by Howie Mandel. And he's just adorable. You know, the main character is fine. He's a little bit bland. He's nice enough. He gets the job done, but there's not much to him. The mum, however, I thought his mum was freaking awesome. When we get into like
She's
the chaos
a good movie,
the Gremlins,
mum, isn't she?
She was fantastic. And that whole scene where she's taking on the Gremlins, Stephen and I were like, this woman is awesome. She is like this movie's final girl. Like, she is not taking any crap from these monsters. And the fact that she puts up with her husband, who, you know, obviously is a bit of a, not a deadbeat, well, a bit of a loser. You know, he's got all these stupid inventions that don't work, and obviously that puts a strain on the family. So the fact that she puts up with him is amazing. Now, I wanted to ask you, did you recognize the town when you were watching?
No.
Is the town that we now know as Stars Hollow.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah. As soon as I saw the town, I was like, hang on a second. I know this town. So, yes, that set was built for Back to the Future, and then obviously has been used so many times since. But the exterior of the house that the main character lives in is actually Lorelei's house. So next time you rewatch... Awesome. Yeah, have a close look and you'll see. So I'm actually really surprised that Gilmore Girls has never made a Gremlins reference, given that it's right there. So that was fun. But yeah, no, I had a lot of fun with this movie. You know, the 80s effects, the actual Gremlins themselves are really fun. They're such little terrors, man. Like, I forgot how freaking destructive they are. but I also forgot how much fun they are. Like that scene in the bar where they're all like smoking and playing pool, and poor Phoebe Cates' character is like trying to like, work her way around them and figure out how to get out of that situation. That's really fun. And yeah, it's just, I think it's just one of those movies that's it's just fun. You don't want to take it too seriously, but like I said, there were some parts that made Stephen and I just go, oh, and then some parts where we were laughing and we're like, are we supposed to be laughing at this? We're not sure if this is supposed to be funny or not. I do think it does have a little bit of an issue with tone that I think gets sorted out better in the second one. But overall, I think this is a fun movie to watch. It's just fun. It's so random, and the little creatures are so much fun to watch, and you can tell that Joe Dante's having a lot of fun with the film, and everyone's having fun on set. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed rewatching it. What about you? I think you've seen it a few more times than I
I've
have.
seen it, yeah. I mean, I might have seen it last year. I can't remember. It was either that but several times growing up.
Yeah.
Probably the last few years, I've kind of revisited it a bit. Like maybe there was a gap between watching it in my youth and then revisiting it more recently. But I've definitely seen it a few times in the last few years. But no, I love this movie. I think it's a classic. I think it holds up as a classic. I think I will dispute a couple of things you said there. I can understand your point about the tone, and the tone does take me off guard. I mean, obviously, the whole thing, her speech in the middle about why she hates Chris. Like, now I'm used to it because I've watched the movie enough time. But I think, to me, it's impressive that a movie which is this family friendly in a way does have that darker side, and it's impressive. I mean, you can say maybe it's out of left field a bit, but this again, and we talked about this a bit when we were talking about Home Alone, but I think this does have a really good script in the way that film does, where there is cause and effect. I think it's a little better written than you're giving it credit for, because that's an example right there where that is set up earlier in the film. She does hint that she has a problem with Christmas, and like she's not as enthusiastic about the holidays as like Billy is. And then that's sort of paid off in that later scene where we actually find out the reason, and it is such a dark story and so disturbing. Debate whether they should have done that scene or whether it belongs in this sort of movie. But I kind of glad that they had the balls to do it, because sometimes, a movie can be a bit too safe and mainstream. It is good to have like darker edges, and of course that's something people talk about with It's a Wonderful Life, how that's a much darker movie than you would maybe naturally assume. And I think this is, again, because this is referencing that movie a bit and like prestiging it a little bit, then that's partly why I think they went for like a darker tone with that stuff. Then there's that balance. I like that it works as a sort of a fun, family-friendly movie. It works as a horror movie for like people like us as well, like good horror scenes in it, really well directed horror scenes. I mean, I think Joe Dante is just a very nostalgic director, and I think he just likes to do like prestiges to the sort of movies that he grew up on, but putting his own sort of adventurous sort of spin on it as well.
He did The Howling, didn't he, Joe Dante, and Piranha? So yes, he does like those kind of a bit more satire-y type movies.
And B movies, but obviously a lot of his movies have a very adventurous sort of feel as well, like Inner Space, not a lot to the characters. I mean, obviously Billy, you can argue, but then he has a little bit of an arc just because he, over the course of the movie, he eventually has to like front up to these things. He has to like, it's a simple arc, but like he has to be a bit more brave, and it's almost a bit like that with him pursuing Kate, where he just needs to have a little bit more confidence because this girl does like him at the end of the day. And I mean, I'm not talking like massive depth, but I think the depth is in there. I think for an 80s film, it's pretty progressive when it comes to female characters. I mean, we mentioned the mother. Like you, I'm impressed at how much of a badass she is in that scene and
That
how
was
she
very
stands
cool.
up. But also Phoebe Cates, her character. I think she's a very tough, grounded character. You know, like I like that subversion where it is Billy who's maybe a little bit more of like the naive, slightly wimpy one, and Kate's actually the tougher, like the more experienced one a little bit, because I like how she deals with the Judge Reinhold character in that bar scene. It's
Oh
almost
yeah.
like because she has to work in a bar and she has to like put up with sleazes like that, she sort of knows how to deal with them, and she's just not going to give in to that. She's just not going to take the easy thing. It's like, okay, I'll go out with this guy because. But without making a scene, she knows how to deal with that sort of character. So I like that about it. I think the female characters, or at least those two, pretty progressive for a film that came out in like 1984. And also we get a female Scrooge, which is pretty great.
Yeah. Yes, I kept calling her Scrooge too. Yeah.
Very Scrooge-like.
She was threatening his dog. Stephen and I were like, what the hell, man? What is wrong with this woman? Oh my God. Look, I get what you're saying, and maybe with some rewatches I might see it, but I think it was more that, like, at the end of the movie, I kind of felt like the characters were still the same characters from the beginning. Like, you know, you expect these kind of movies, you know, like Home Alone, we'll reference that, you know, Kevin has that arc of learning to be independent, learning to appreciate his family. And I don't know, I felt like maybe this would do like the dad realizing that he needs to, like, you know, give up his dreams and be a better dad or something like that. But they didn't really have like that sort of angle in this movie, which is fine. For me, it just, the characters, they didn't really seem to have like arc.
Well, could have gone a little further with it because at the end of the movie, they definitely, my impression is that the characters have learned lessons because the father clearly regrets what he does at the start of the movie. I mean, it's hard not to when all that shit down.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like he clearly realizes that he acted hastily and like apologizes to the owner of, and I think that's another thing. It's actually quite refreshing than Billy accepts and no, Gizmo has to go back with his owner.
I know. That was
It's sad as well, obviously, because you sort of want them to end up together at the end of the movie. But it's sad, but it's, a lot of movies would just go for the happy ending.
They would. Yes, you're right. You're right. And then that is a nicer version. It's just so sad. Just a little, hi, Billy. It's like, oh no, little Gizmo, stop. He's so cute. Oh, I just fell in love with Gizmo. I gotta say, 80s movies and Asian characters, never great. This one was nowhere near as bad as some other 80s movies are, but I still wasn't a massive fan
It's a little bit of a stereotype, isn't it?
Yes, it's definitely like he comes in and basically, yes, and he speaks in like Confucius sayings and basically doesn't really have much of a character outside of being like wise Asian man. But again, like I said, there are definitely worse portrayals in 80s movies.
Absolutely.
So we take the wins where we can get them. But yeah, I have to say, Stephen and I were definitely commenting on that aspect a little. But look, overall, this movie is so much fun. You know, like the Gremlins themselves, and obviously this being the 80s, there was no CGI, so it's all practical effects, which obviously makes it that much more fun. Yeah. You know, it's when they actually turn into the bad Gremlins, obviously that is a lot of fun. Stripe is just like, you know, a little terror and just.
I'll jump in there because, of course, as Brooklyn Nine-Nine fans know, Stripe is the one that Gina's attracted to.
Rosa.
Rosa.
Yeah, I love that.
Because she likes the bad boys,
Yes. Oh, I love that. But I was hoping that you'd bring that up because I wanted to make that reference. It's like, when I was young, I had a major crush on an evil gremlin. Stripe? Yeah, well, I'm not going to bone Gizmo. Oh, that's so good. But yes, so that's a lot of fun. We'll talk about, so obviously when the Gremlins, well, obviously spoilers, but not really, because I mean, the movie, there's not that much plot, so there's not that much to spoil. But I do absolutely love when the Gremlins first hatch at home and they try to take on the mum, and the mum is like, "Oh no, you little fuckers! I'm gonna put you in the blender. I'm gonna put you in the microwave. I'm gonna chop you up with
Yeah,
this
she's
and that."
pretty
I'm just,
badass.
oh, Stephen and I are watching the mum, and we're just like, this mum is awesome. Like, she was so good. So that
She
was one of my
went.
favorite parts. I did also love the Gremlins going after the Scrooge lady, and
Yeah, we'll
her,
get to that.
yes,
We'll
okay.
build up to that, but it's a
But
very
yeah,
good
so
scene.
yeah, so that one was really fun. And yeah, just seeing them go out and about and, wander around. Oh, we forgot to mention that, of course, an 80s staple, Corey Feldman, is in this movie. He
Yeah.
was in like every 80s kids movie, so of course he's going to pop up
Well,
in this one.
what was funny, I said this on stream, for some reason he looks quite a bit younger than in the Goonies. And yeah, I think
Yes.
the Goonies
I
was
think
the
the
year
Goonies came
after
first.
that.
Well, yeah.
I
But
might
he
have
looks
came
so
before.
much. But that being said, kids at
Funny.
that age, they do
Yeah.
age very quickly. Like a kid going from 10 to 11 years old can make such a jump. So,
That's true.
because I mean, you see that like in Stranger Things and stuff like that. The kids, they grow. But yeah, Corey Feldman, such an 80s staple. I mean, any 80s movie, the Goonies, this one, the Lost Boys, you're going to see the Feld stuff. So that was a fun 80s throwback.
But yeah, so if we talk about that opening scene, so Asian stereotype aside, it's a really great opening scene because I just love the look of it. I love that rain-drenched like alley and the colours and how sort of gothic it looks. Like it
Yeah.
sets up a very eerie sort of. And again, I know it's a stereotype, but like when the Asian guy walks in, he does have a presence to him, and like the way
Yeah.
it's shot. And but again, I know you do as well. But I mean, I love a horror with rules, and this sets up the rules so early, and they're ingrained in you. And it's a bit like, obviously the don't cross the stream in Ghostbusters, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just the sort of thing it's passed down. Then people have to recite the Gremlin rules. But
Yeah.
the good thing about this sort of film where you have rules and they are set up early is then the plot of the movie can play with those rules, and it can find ways to, like, because something's going to go wrong because it's a movie, but you can find ways to do it in a credible way, like what ends up happening, the fact that his clock has gone out, so he thinks it's before midnight. That's a clever way for it to happen without it feeling too
contrived.
But yeah, contrived. Oh yeah, that idiot, what's he thinking type thing. It's quite a realistic way for him to like make that mistake. So yeah, that's good stuff. The way the movie.
Yeah, that is a fun opening scene. It almost feels like they're trying to, like, I don't know, reference like 70s noir films with a bit of horror, with all the smoke and the lighting and everything, and the voiceover of the guy in the big trench coat with the hat, almost like it's setting up like
I got
sort of
noir vibes, definitely.
Yeah. So that is fun. And obviously I think even the way that the guy acquires Gizmo is quite realistic. The kid selling the Mao guy out from under his grandfather's nose, like being like, "Nah, man, we need the money. My grandfather's just being silly, we'll sell him to you." So I thought that was cool. But yeah, that is a fun setup.
Yeah, and like we said, the look of the town, it's a classic small town.
And I've seen it in other TV shows, so I tend to recognize this particular town or this particular set very easily because I've seen it used in so many different films and TV shows. Because it's used in Pretty Little Liars as the town in that, and it's used in Ghost Whisperer as the town in that as well.
Okay.
So yeah, and I've seen it pop up in even Brooklyn Nine-Nine uses it in a scene where Jake and Pimento and Gina go on a road trip. So yeah, it's just a very recognizable town for me, and yeah, I really like that. Just like I said, I'm really surprised that Gilmore Girls never did a Gremlins reference because it's literally right there, same house and everything. But yeah, I always love a good small town, and of course you do too, because it's always so much fun to play with the small town setting.
Yeah, and I guess that's why the sequel works quite well as a contrast to that. Just then they changed the setting, like it's the big city, and these characters are now being thrown in the deep end. So it's like the opposite almost. But this is a nice little cozy small town, and And I will just say, because we should talk about the Dick Miller character, and Dick Miller is I mean, just this legend of B movies, and he's like this guy. He was in a lot of Roger Corman movie, but
Okay.
so he's like the guy in The Couple, the one who's
Oh, was he the one that kept going on about foreigners because that
Yeah,
was
he
getting old
is.
and they really wanted to stuff something in his mouth?
Well, I said this the other night. If he was around now, he would be a Trump supporter. This guy,
Yes,
without doubt.
absolutely. Yes,
But
yes.
luckily, they sort of move away from that in the sequel. But
Yes, thank God.
but you know, it's just representing a certain old school type character who is a little bit set in his ways and not as open to die. It's one of those. It's a product a little bit of its time, but no, the actor's obviously wonderful and brings a lot of charisma to the role. And yeah, no, Dick Miller, he appeared in every Joe Dante movie up to his death.
Okay.
So there is a role for him in. I mean, Joe Dante hasn't made a movie for a while, so I think pretty much every Joe Dante movie there's a part for Dick Miller, which is nice. I think it's because Joe Dante, again, is from that Roger Corman sort of school. It's the more cranky, old, sarcastic.
Yeah, and his wife just has a really creepy smile.
Yeah,
and I
but
saw
she's
her, we were like,
the
what?
naive one, and
Yeah.
you know, very overly friendly almost. But yeah, they're a fun little couple, you know, and we get more of them in the sequel. Obviously, horror sequences, the way they're directed, and I mean, we not even the theme is a classic. You can obviously just hum the theme, but I also like some of the other sort of bits of music where it's like just building tension, like just the scene in the kitchen, and I just love those oranges surrounding like the sort of blender, like they're like bunched in, but they're playing almost this eerie sort of sci-fi style music when it's like building tension in that scene. But as we said, that's a wonderful horror type scene, and the use of that Johnny Mathis song as well when they put the record on, that has never been used in such a creepy context. I'm willing to bet. But yeah, it's a good scene, as we say.
No, there are some fun stuff. Well, like I was saying earlier, the Scrooge lady, her death is both horrifying and hilarious because you see that she's got some weird contraption in her house, like that takes her down the stairs. So of course the Gremlins come over and mess with her electricity, so she gets on the stairs.
It's painfully funny. It's hilarious.
It's brilliant. She just goes flying up the never-ending stairwell. I was like, how many stories is this house? Apparently it's only 2 stories. But then the way she just comes flying out the window was like one of the best things I've ever seen.
Great payoff. And it's wonderful. It works because she's terrible and you hate her forever. So it's sort of like she's getting... But it's a movie thing. Obviously, in real life, even though she's a bit of a bitch, you would be devastated.
Yeah, that would be a little
within a movie context. It's like, she finally got hers, and
so that was fun.
I do have to wonder why, because she runs the bank, so she seems pretty active. So I'm not really sure why she's got a stair lift at home.
I know, that's what I said to Stephen. I'm like, is she just really lazy, or just like she just has this to show that she does have it, like she's that rich.
Well, I guess it came back to bite her if that's the reason.
Definitely.
So that's one scene where you're on board with the Gremlins. You're like, it's almost like they knew that everybody hates.
They knew
exactly.
Exactly. They went and got revenge for the town. But the scene where they string the dog up, oh my God, poor puppy. I know he wasn't hurt, but Stephen and I were horrified at that. Although I read that in the original script, which was much darker, they were actually going to kill the dog. So I'm so glad that they decided to adjust and make it. That's right. Because I think this was written originally as just a straight out horror film. And then they decided they wanted to make it a more family friendly film. And that's where we got, the more fun and slightly lighter aspects.
I Shrunk the Kids. It's Stuart Gordon. I think or is it it's someone who's known for body horror. The time going to be much darker than it turned out to be, and there's definitely things in it where you can see. But yeah,
Man, I haven't seen that one in ages. But yes, you can see the leftovers. When you're right, Stuart Gordon.
Jonathan Banks is now Mike in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, so he looks different because he's got hair. In those, he doesn't have any hair, so he looks very different. He's much older, but he pops up in quite a lot, and he was in like 80s movies. In fact, this same year he's in Beverly Hills Cop, so same year as this, so he's in quite a lot of 80s movies. I mean, this is genius, but the cinema scene,
yes,
that's just brilliant, and I just love the fact that they do this double take. They're enjoying it, like this wholesome, like Snow White and the Seven.
I know, and they're all singing "Hi Ho."
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you could do a remake, Snow White and the Seven Gremlins, or something like that. But yeah, there's just something clever about that because it's this seasonal film set at Christmas, and it's almost like, this wholesome Disney film. It's just so like wholesome and charming. It even affects Gremlins. I kind of love that. It's almost like the universal language. It gets through to everyone. About the stuff with Phoebe Cates when she tells that story, which is a brilliant scene, and I like how much attention is paid to that scene and how dramatic it is. I think the only trouble is then they do move on quite quickly, so it sort of undercuts it a little bit. I think that's maybe what you're talking about with the tone shift, because it's almost like we then have to get on with the final.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's Gremlins.
Yeah, she also has another line earlier on, but Stephen and I were like, "Jesus Christ, who wrote this line?"
I know the line. Risk,
So just a little bit of a trigger warning, people. But she basically is all like, "Oh, Christmas, when some people are opening presents, other people are opening their wrists," and Steve and I were like, "My God!"
Sadly, she's not wrong. There is.
I mean, she's not wrong, but that's intense, man.
Well, that one caught me more off guard just because I forget about it, because the speech she does near the end, that's more memorable. But when I heard that the other night, I was, oh shit.
Yeah, Steve and I were as well. We were just like, Jesus Christ, that is dark.
That was really dark. Wow. But Phoebe Cates, she was. I said this earlier. I think along with Elizabeth Shue, she was kind of the it girl for like cute girl next door type in the 80s, because
I always think Drop Dead Fred when I think Phoebe Cates, her, right? Isn't it Drop Dead Fred?
That's I mean, that's you putting your 90s cap on, but it's
actually true.
It's been a while since I've seen that film, to be fair, but I think wasn't she in Fast Times at Ridgemont?
Yes, she was in Fast Times. Yeah.
Which again, that's another surprisingly dark film.
It is, isn't it?
Fast Times. Yeah. But yeah, she had a few. But she's very likable in this, and like I said, I did like the character was a bit tougher than you're expecting.
A little hint that they leave at the end, when Gizmo's all like, "Bye, Billy," and then the Asian dude's like, "Oh, well, maybe one day you will be ready," because that's basically what he comes in and says, and he does that very typical like Westerners destroy everything kind of thing that they always say, and he's like, "You are not ready for the responsibility." So I like that they kind of hint that maybe Billy will be ready for the responsibility, and then maybe he and Gizmo can meet up later, which obviously we know does happen because of a sequel. But at that point, I like that they give that little bit of a hint that it might not be goodbye forever. Like you have to leave him now, but maybe one day you'll get him back. So it's cute. It's a little bit more uplifting, and it kind of lessens the sadness of having to say goodbye to Gizmo.
I think what I was going to mention before, and this funny, it's a link back to Home Alone, because of course Chris Columbus does the script of this.
Yes.
And it's really surprising because like again in Home Alone, we I think we praise the script more than the direction, because
Yes.
John Hughes, it's a great script, but in this I do have to give him some props for the script, Chris, because as a director I dismiss him as a little bit of, it's serviceable, but
it's decent. His direction is solid.
Yeah,
it's good,
pretty.
but it's nothing to get over the top about. He can make a decent film, a watchable film, but you don't run to the awards ceremony with his films or anything like that.
And I think, like, maybe you brought up some of the limitations with, like, where maybe the film could be improved a bit. But, I mean, generally speaking, I think this is a really well-written film. And I don't know if there was, like, rewrites or stuff, but...
there definitely was. It was a lot darker at first. Yeah.
Well, but it is a good story. It's a well-told story, and it's good characters. And there's a reason it has lasted the test of time and why people still talk about it. The guy who plays the dad was actually like a singer. He was like sort of like an old-fashioned rock and roll style singer. And
cool.
I mean, he's no longer with us, but he passed away. But that's sort of what he was known for before he did this. And I don't know, you can sort of see that in a way, just the look of him and like a certain charisma that he has.
Yes.
One or two dated elements, but I guess you're always going to have that with a 40-year-old movie. But I think we will rate it at the end. We will rate both of them together. So let's move on to the new batch, Gremlins 2 from 1990. Do you want to do the setup for this one?
Yeah, so, because I just watched this morning. So in this one, we're obviously a few years after the original. The two main characters, Billy and Kate, Phoebe Cates' character, have moved to New York, and they now work for this developer who, did you recognize him? Because you've been watching a certain show that he's in. Yep. Good old John Glover, who I love because Lionel Luthor, but I also think he's really fun in this. So the movie opens with him trying to buy out the last remaining store in Chinatown, which happens to belong to the guy from the first movie who's got Gizmo. And then, he ends up passing away. They buy the development, and Gizmo gets taken to a lab, which apparently exists inside this building, which has so many different things in it. So this guy owns this big building. They reference the name of it a couple of times. I think his name is Clamp. So it's like the Clamp Towers or something
like that.
Yes. And in these towers apparently are architects and designers and a movie studio and a science lab and something else. And it's like, it's a very typical 80s/90s portrayal of future technology, so it's voice activated everything and like weird gadgets that do bizarre things and like a building that works in a way that no building would ever work. But of course, Gizmo ends up at the lab. And of course, once again, through a series of events, he gets wet. Billy tries to save him. All the new gremlins spawn, and we get so much more fun. Now, I don't know if you know the story behind Gremlins 2 and how it became about. But after Gremlins was done, Joe Dante did not want to do a sequel. They apparently came to him almost as soon as the original movie was released and said, do a sequel. And he said, no, I've done the story. There's nothing more to tell. I don't want to do a sequel. Bugger off. And apparently the studio a few years later basically came to him and said, okay, look, we know you don't want to do a sequel, but we want a sequel. So we will give you whatever budget you want, and you can do whatever you want. And that really shows, because what I really like about Gremlins 2, the new batch, is that it has more fun with the premise than the original does. So this one definitely feels more like a comedy and less like a horror. And I think that they have more fun with the gremlins, with the premise. So basically, they start spawning in this New York building and chaos ensues. We get a lot more gremlins because obviously in the lab, there's all sorts of what's what I'm looking for? Formulas and stuff that are being cooked up there. So the gremlins start experimenting with all the different formulas, and we end up with all these different gremlins, which we'll get into as the story goes on. Billy and Kate are there trying to avert the crisis as usual. We also get the two neighbors that we talked about in the first film, the foreigner guy, who is so much more palatable in this one because they kind of get rid of that angle. And they actually end up being, especially him, they actually end up being really, really cool characters in this one. And yeah, we also have Christopher Lee, which I had completely forgotten
It's a
about. And
pretty standout cast.
it was a pretty good
Yeah.
cast. Yeah, so that was really fun to see. At least I actually really liked John Glover's character. I thought he was a lot of
Oh,
fun.
it's great.
So yeah, so that's basically what we've got with this one. So have you watched this one as much as the first one, or how did you feel watching this one this
No,
time
I
around?
haven't watched it as much. I mean, it's a solid sequel. I have fun with this one. I think it's better than some people give it credit for. It's obviously is a bit of a forgotten one in comparison with the first movie. Like, it hasn't really stood the test of time in the same way, which is a bit of a shame because I think it's an underrated sequel.
Me too. It's really fun.
Yeah, by the sounds of it, I don't enjoy it as much as you. I think it is a little bit messy at times, and I think there are certain goofy elements that I think they could have toned down on, and I guess it's just because I mean, as it says in the title, the new batch, they are they're showing these are new. It's almost a wink wink where, like, if you're going to do a sequel, you almost have to have different kinds of gremlins. Some of the creature design wasn't as good this time. The cuddly one, the one Kate confuses as Gizmo, I didn't really like his design. I thought that looked a bit silly.
Looked a bit wonky, didn't it?
I didn't quite buy that she would confuse Gizmo for him, but I guess maybe it's been a few years at this point.
It's been a few years, and I think Billy spent more time with Gizmo than she did, so
True.
I think I could buy that she would just see this creature and be like, oh, that must be Gizmo.
So there's some of that where I like the Knave, because that's definitely what a sequel should do. I mean, some of it they're going a little bit too far, because the one that talks in a very posh voice and he's got the glasses.
The brain one, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if you're going to get this reference, but I'll tell you who his voice reminded me of. Have you ever seen a show called Through the Keyhole?
No.
Well, it's a UK show, and the whole deal was each episode it shows you bits of like a celebrity's house.
Oh,
and
okay.
You've got people in the studio, and they have to guess from clues whose celebrity's house it is. And it's hosted by a guy called Lloyd Grossman.
Okay.
And he talks in a very similar sort of voice. And he has a catchphrase. It's like, who would live in a house like that? Or something like that. And he says it in that sort of voice. So it makes... I mean, randomly, he also had his own brand of like pasta sauce or something, which
sure,
you could
why
buy
not?
in stores. Yeah, just
why not?
a side sort of venture. But yeah, I was so getting Lloyd Grossman vibes, and I knew it wasn't him, but he sounded a lot. And Cindy said it's someone out of The Odd Couple or something, one of those older like sitcoms.
Oh, okay.
And apparently that's who voices him. But fun with them and doing like the sexy sort of gremlin and
the bougie gremlin. She was fun.
Is the security guy when they get locked in together. That's fun. that was a lot of fun. But no, I mean, it's a solid sequel. I do like a lot of the satire about like TV and about kind of like capitalism, this more cynical, like, and that's why the contrast works, like moving from a smaller, modest town to New York City and having the characters thrust into a more cutthroat, busy sort of lifestyle. And I think what's so good about John Glover is in this, again, it's a little bit like his Smallville character, but I think he just had that little dose of naivety where it's almost like he's a cynical prick, but he doesn't realize he's a cynical prick. He does this sort of like naivety where he doesn't quite know what he's doing. And I think it makes the character a little more likable than he otherwise would have been.
I agree. Yes.
And he's
playing a developer You know, that's such a sleazy type character. You know, 80s developer comes in to like take over the town. But you're right, there's a naivety to him. Like at the end when he's like, developer saves town. I love it, you know?
Yeah, his enthusiasm, because it's like that early scene with Billy where he's like, he sees the pain and it's like, what does he say, like pine trees or something? I like that or something. That sort of, like, it's just so, there's something about his delivery and like the way he views the world, which kind of makes the character a bit more endearing than it otherwise.
I agree. I actually quite liked his character. I had a lot of fun. And like, you know, towards the end when he's like, yes, now I have time to use my secret escape room. You know, like he's so enthusiastic about everything. He doesn't come across as like the slimy, evil corporate guy. He more comes across as like the clueless corporate guy. Like, yeah, he's going to knock your building down, but he's going to be really nice and enthusiastic about it. So, you know, plus at the end, you know, I mean, we'll get there, but he turns out to be quite decent to all the main characters as well. So, yeah, I really enjoyed his character. And I think he seemed like he was having fun playing the character as well. And I obviously am a John Glover fan, being such a Smallville fan. I think Lionel Luthor is a really fun role. So it was really fun to see him in this. Oh, speaking of Gremlins, hello.
Hello, there's
a little gremlin has come to say hello.
But yeah, he's very charismatic, and I think just because he plays everything just so straight, and there's a naivety to him, and he's great. And just some of his reactions are like the scene with the photocopier, like that scene, and like the way that scene's shot and the build up to it is really good, because you've got the whole thing with the secretary, and it's the Gremlins pretending to be the secretary, isn't it? So head of security, Robert Picardo.
Yes, I know him. He is everywhere. I've seen him in so many different things. Yeah.
Well, I'm watching him at the moment because he's one of the main cast members in Star Trek Voyager. So I'm watching him right now, and he's one of my favourite characters in that show. He's brilliant, and he's in another Joe Dante movie. He's in Inner Space, so he's worked with Joe Dante before this. And actually, the older guy, you know, the one who gets caught on security early on and they kick him out the building.
Yes, the smoking guy. The smoking. Yes, I definitely know him from somewhere. I couldn't figure out where, but
well, he's also in Inner Space. So again, it's another Joe Dante. He's worked with him before, but yeah, he's quite familiar.
Yes, he's another one. But yeah, that first guy that you were talking about, the one who's in Star Trek, the Robert guy, yeah, I've seen him in Grey's Anatomy. I've seen him in Law and Order SVU. I've seen him in, I think, like, you know, just bit pieces. I think he's in a Smallville episode. You know, he's one of those bit actors that, he just turns up in a lot of things. But he was very, very good.
And I think because he's very deadpan and he has that delivery, and I think it's good because he can play characters both ways, because I mean in Star Trek he plays a holographic doctor basically on the ship.
Oh, okay.
And he's just tailor-made for that, but then he plays a villain very well in this. His twins, they're in like Terminator 2, aren't they? Like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think they are. Yes.
So there's people popping up all over the place in this one. So no, it is a very enjoyable, solid sequel. One of the best I do like the line from like it's the guy who's in the Monsters, but he's playing that.
Oh yes, the Dracula dude.
Yeah. I do like the line about like when he's talking about the Glover character, where he's like, well, he doesn't like anything in black and white, he only likes color, and that's just one of the, like, this is what they're going for with this film. Good way to update it. I just think overall it doesn't really have the charm of the first film, and I think it's a bit more messy than the first film. I think it does feel, and maybe it's just because it is more of a comedy, but it does feel a bit more sketchy, this one, where it's like, well, now we're doing another thing. Now we're doing this. It doesn't really quite. I think with the first film, they're quite clever the way they pace it. I think they do give you a breather between like the big scenes. This one doesn't. I mean, once you get into it, I think they're just throwing things at you left, right, and centre. So I don't think this one is as well paced as the first movie.
Well, fair enough. I found both of them to be quite similar when I watched. I thought they were both fairly. I mean, they're both about an hour and 40 minutes, and the time went pretty quickly for me. I think for me with the second
it does
one,
go quickly.
I just kind of like in the second one because, like I said, because the first one I did find the tone a little bit back and forth, so it didn't quite work as well for me. Whereas with this one, because they were just leaning into the silliness, I was able to just enjoy the more comedic tone. And I also like that this one pokes fun at the first one a little bit. Like I like when Billy's trying to explain to the security guards, don't feed them after midnight. They're like, okay, but what if you're in a different time zone, or what if they get something stuck in their throat, and then like at midnight they
Good.
swallow it, or stuff like that.
So you can imagine people asking those sorts of questions.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was fun, and I don't know if you'd like this as much because you like the speech in the original a bit more, but I actually really loved when they had Kate start to do another speech about how she doesn't like Lincoln Day. And I just love Billy's just like, no, honey, we don't have time for this one now. No. I just thought that was really fun. The fact that they referenced that original speech and had her try to do another speech and just get interrupted.
No, I do like that. I mean, at first I was a bit, how dare you? Because you're sort of mocking that scene from them. But I think within the context of this movie, it actually works. It does work. It's a clever little gag, and there's so much in this movie where they are like sort of nodding to the audience. And I hate to say this because I love Christopher Lee, but I actually think his character could be cut out. And I think that's an example where the script isn't quite as tight as the first one. I guess it's just because they want to do the science thing where they're in the lab. But like, if you actually watch the movie, you could cut out his character and not really lose anything.
That's true. That is true.
I think he just feels like another big name guest star. And
but it's Christopher Lee, so
there's certain things. I mean, they could have lost the Hulk Hogan thing, but I mean, that
was
because
random.
It's the 90s, it's early 90s.
So random.
Yeah, and again, that's breaking the fourth wall, and I mean, the guy's got commitment because he went to a movie dressed in his wrestling gear, and he had his title belt on. I mean, he's really in love with himself, but
well, it's Hulk Hogan.
Well, yeah, but no, it was. I mean, obviously, when I saw that as a kid, I would have marked out I would have marked because obviously I'm a wrestling fan and I was watching, but now it's a little bit eye rolly, and it's probably one of the goofier moments where they didn't have to go quite so far.
Yeah, that was a little extreme. Like when that happened, like when he went, because I haven't, again, Gremlins 2 I haven't seen for such a long time, but I'd forgotten a lot. And when he was going to cinema, he's like, Hulk Hogan. I'm like, no, they didn't actually get Hulk Hogan. And then he stopped. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, they did. Okay, that's just really random. So that was fun.
I mean, this would have been this was 1990, so this would have been at the peak of his popularity when it comes to the WWF. Think of the boss, like Billy's boss. Did you find that actress?
Oh, she was annoying.
Did
she
but
was
in
annoying.
A bad way or a good way? I mean, I thought she was quite funny, but
her accent was bugging me. She was really leaning into the Joyzy thing. That was really intense. I mean, she was fine. I didn't hate her, but I did find her a bit annoying. And I was like, you're his boss and you're taking him out for dinner and trying to plant one on him. Oh, you're lucky this is the 80s and sexual harassment wasn't a huge thing. Because that's totally
a
no-go.
It's the 90s, but it's
yes,
close
that's right.
enough,
Very, very close. She was
but
fine.
It's just part of the character. I don't think you're meant to overthink that side of it.
No, you're definitely not. But unfortunately, in today's age, when you see stuff like that, you can't help but think, oh dear, it's a little dodgy.
But then she's sort of a villain. Initially, anyway, she becomes a good guy later on.
I did like the scene where he's giving orders to everyone. He's like, you do this, and then he just goes up to her and he's like, Marla, you smoke. And she's like, got it. And I'm like, yep, okay, cool.
We actually saw this actress in one of the Home Alone sequels. She's in I think she might have played either the mother or one of
She
the
did Home
villains.
Alone 3. I thought
Yeah,
she looked familiar.
I think
Not because
she's
I was
the
looking at her.
mother. Yeah,
Yes, she
yeah.
is.
So different
Ah,
sort of a role, and she's.
mm,
Yeah, I thought she was fine. I mean, the plot involving her probably was a bit lame.
yeah.
I mean, I was saying this, no disrespect, she's clearly an attractive woman, but it's Phoebe Cates all the way for me. The idea Billy could go with anyone else out of
Well, he doesn't. He definitely still was like, nope, Phoebe Cates for me.
Well, yeah, I think that plot was a bit contrived because I
Yeah.
think that was oh come on,
And it didn't really go anywhere. It was
well,
resolved pretty
yeah, because
quickly.
she
So,
goes after
mm,
him and she still had time to like catch up with him, and then she just stops, and then they do the
mm.
contrived thing of she thinks he might be seeing his boss or something, and
Yeah, but then it never really goes anywhere. It's
uh,
resolved really quickly. Yeah, I think we could have done without that little plot line, but it didn't bug me too much. It was just kind of there.
I think it's as satisfying the way Gizmo ends up back in the plot, like the way he ends up with Billy back in this building. I think that's a little bit more contrived. I mean, obviously, the original movie is the original movie.
Yeah, it
It's
definitely
a
feels a bit
different.
kind of like, how did he end up in this exact building with Billy? And then Billy just happens to hear the janitor humming the same tune and just happens to figure
Yeah,
out that that
yeah.
means Gizmo's here. No, I get that. I get that. It definitely feels more contrived than the original. But it didn't bother me too much because, again, like I said, I think because this one has such a
It's a
sense of like
lighter
heightened
movie, isn't
silliness, yeah, so
it?
you don't want to take this one too seriously. So I didn't mind it. But you're right, it's definitely more contrived. And the plot is definitely, I think with this one, they were more focusing on how can we make it fun and silly as opposed to how can we actually tell a story but again, for me, that didn't bother me because I actually was having a lot of fun. But I'm not as attached to the original as you are either. So I think there's just a difference there.
Well, yeah, and I do appreciate, as I said, some of the satire, and I do
Mm,
appreciate that they sort of had an idea and they kind of went all in on it. And
yeah.
I mean, fair enough, it's more of a comedy, but it's just a bit more hit and miss, I think, than the first one. But as sequels go, I think it is very solid. And I mean, you would have to be a stick in the mud, really, not to enjoy the scene where they're all singing New York, New York. I mean, that's kind of
Hmm.
glorious. Once they decided it was going to be set in New York, there was always going to be a scene where the Gremlins were going to do that. So that's kind of great. And
Mm. There are a couple of movie references towards the end that I like too. Like they have a little Phantom of the Opera reference to the
they
Lon
do,
Chaney
yeah.
movie. And then, as they're dying at the end, one of them has a witch's hat on and is all like, I'm melting, I'm melting. So of course there's a little Wizard of Oz. Plus I really do love Gizmo going all Rambo. Because you see him watching
Oh,
Rambo at the
yeah, yeah,
beginning, and then
yeah.
he's doing his little workout and gets his little headband, and he has his like flaming arrows. I thought that
And
was
that
fun.
works again with the theme because like the old guy is telling him, isn't it? This stuff will rot your brain or something,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah,
that's
doesn't
like
like
the
the fact that he
whole
watches
thing. Because
TV.
yeah, that then the TV studio. I mean, their whole world is
Hmm.
like TV, so it's
Yeah.
like support characters like the lady who does the cookery show.
Yeah, she was fun. The
She's got a
microwave
really distinct
Marge.
voice. Yeah, yeah. So
Mm.
yeah, no, overall it's a fun sequel. It's a
Yeah,
solid
it is.
sequel. And again, nice that we got more of the Dick Miller character and, like you said, toned down the
Yes.
sort of more unpleasant side of him, which partly a product of the time. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice to see him get a bigger role in this and actually play quite a big part in the finale. And yeah, I think maybe overall we didn't. Kate wasn't as good in this movie, but I think maybe it's just a different setting. It's a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense she would follow Billy to New York and they would work in the same place, but yeah. But no, I quite like when her and Marla do come together later in
Yeah.
the. That works quite well. But
Mm.
yeah, solid sequel, fun sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely better than some people give it credit for. Are you going to rate the first one?
So this is probably lower than you would rate it, but keep in mind, this is like the first time I've seen it since I was a kid, so I just might need to rewatch it. I thought it was fun. I did find it a little bit random, and like I said, there wasn't that much character development, and some of the tone was a bit like, woo, okay, let's calm down. So I'm going to go with 6.5 for the first one. I think it was good, it was entertaining, and I had a lot of fun watching it, but I can't go higher than that. Not just right now.
That's
So,
a joke. Should be way
so
higher.
it's 6.5 for me. What are you giving the first one?
Well, it's tough because I gave Home Alone a 9, and I think this movie is as much a part of my childhood as that. And
okay.
I think I do. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying it's as good as that, but I think I do see a bit more in it than you, like in the characters and again, there is a reason why it has stood the test of time so much, and so I'm sort of floating about. I mean, you've brought up some decent points. Maybe I'll go 8.5. Maybe I'll a bit shy of the 9, but it is tempting to give it a 9 because I do think it is a classic of its genre, and I mean, when you were talking about the second movie maybe being more fun, but you know, as a big horror fan, I do appreciate then the first one it works so well as a horror movie, and that we do get the dark stuff as well as it's still a very heartwarming movie, but at the same time, as we said, it is a darker movie than you think it's going to be. But I'll go 8.5.
Okie dokie.
So what are you going to rate the second movie?
Well, I enjoyed the second movie a little bit more than the first one. Again, I don't think it's anything over the top fantastic, but because it had that slightly sillier tone, because they leaned in a little bit more to like the silliness and the outrageousness of the Gremlins. Love seeing all the new Gremlins. So this one I'm going to go with 7 out of 10 because I did think it was a bit better than the first one and I enjoyed it a bit more. Now, I would say that if I rewatch these movies, I'm definitely willing to adjust these scores. This is just me watching them today and yesterday and haven't seen them since I was very, very young. So for me, they weren't a big part of my childhood. But yeah, on first viewings, this is my impression. So 7 out of 10 for the second one because I did enjoy it just that little bit more for the extra campiness of it. What about you?
Okay, well, we're closer on this one. I'll be a bit more positive because I was going to say 6 because I think it is a little bit messy, but I'll go 6.5. I'll give it a little bit of a bump. And as I was saying, as far as sequels go, I think it's a solid sequel. Yeah, I think it doesn't deserve the hate it gets. I mean,
no, definitely not.
I can see why it's been forgotten compared to the first one, but I think as sequels go, it's solid and deserves a bit more love than it tends to get. So okay, there you go.
Well, there we go. Well, it was a fun watch, though. I did have a lot of fun revisiting it. And now I will probably watch them both more often from now on. Because they were a lot of fun. And I just love Gizmo. He is so cute. He is just so cute. Oh,
no, he really is.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I want
should all have a little Gizmo
and absolutely.
And they do actually mention, I think it's in the first film, don't they? Then that term Gremlins actually comes from like the wartime, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's interesting because, of course, there's that famous episode of The Twilight Zone with like the gremlin.
With the gremlin, yes.
On the wing of the
plane.
So, yeah. So
I was thinking of a Simpsons episode as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, and now we reference it a lot because we say Gremlins in the system, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Surprising because it's such a well-known like movie, especially the first one. Then we haven't had. And I guess it's just because the second one didn't do that well.
Didn't do that well. The director wasn't really interested in coming back. I guess they just never really revived it after that.
Takes a bit of time for there to be the interest again, maybe. But yeah.
We'll see what happens in the future.
I'm sure. Yeah, and now we've got the more kid-friendly TV show, the animated show. So,
yes, yeah.
There's that at least. And I know a lot of the cast members came back for that because
cool.
I think even the one who plays Martha, and like you don't think of her as a major character, but apparently that actress came back for it. So there's quite a lot of the cast members. Let us know what you think of Gremlins and then Gremlins 2. who do you agree with? Which film do you prefer? And do you think Gremlins 2 is a bit of an underrated sequel? Which we definitely do. Like, let us know your thoughts anyway. Like and subscribe as always. Also, check out our Home Alone movies reviews. We did the whole franchise.
So you don't have to.
Yes, so you don't have to. Absolutely. We've done like slasher type horror movies. Like last year, we did the classic Christmas Evil, which Rachel needs to like more. We've obviously done Black Christmas, the original one. And speaking of that sort of thing, just last night I did a commentary for Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Oh no! Oh dear, with all the Santa trauma.
Yeah. And it's on Patreon now, so you can go and check out that commentary. And there's 5 of those, so I'm gonna at some point do the sequel to patrons, and you only have to pay $1 a month to unlock that. So why wouldn't you want to? Silent Night, Deadly Night. The commentary is waiting for you at patreon.com/board now. So just $1 a month to unlock it. And Rachel, if you want to plug your channel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel McDonald, video essays on TV shows and movies. My Tumblr and Twitter are also linked through my account, and Keith will usually put a link in the description. So come and follow me everywhere.
Thanks, guys. Well, I think this is definitely the last video we're doing together before Christmas. So we'll definitely say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Have a great New Year and festive season. And keep watching Christmas movies, especially great ones like Gremlins. And definitely check out the sequel as well, because it is worth checking out. But happy holidays. See you guys again soon. Goodbye.
Steven Spielberg presents Gremlins. Billy Pelser has a nice home.
Billy, is that you?
Yeah, Mom, it's me.
A nice job. A nice girl.
If you're not doing anything this Thursday night, maybe you'd like to go out on a date with me?
I'd love to.
And loving parents who are about to give him
You're gonna like this. No, don't shake it. We're gonna have to open it now. It won't wait till Christmas.
the most unusual gift he ever got.
What is it?
It's your new pet.
Come on, Barney, be a good dog. My dad gave it to me.
But there are a few things to keep in mind. If you expose it to the light, you may hurt it. If you get it wet, it will multiply.
All that from water? They got wet?
Yeah, plain water.
And most important, no matter how much they beg, never let them eat after midnight. Because when they do, they change. They become clever, mischievous,
What's going on here?
and dangerous.
Gremlins, huh? Little monsters.
Right.
Hundreds of them.
Well, I don't know, maybe thousands.
They've been here too. Billy, what are these things? Where do they come from?
Look, I know it sounds crazy, I know. But in a few hours, you're gonna have a major disaster on your hands.
Gremlins, directed by Joe Dante. They'll be expecting you.
Remember the last time? We told you not to feed them after midnight. We told you to keep them away from the light. And the most important warning of all, we told you to never, ever get them wet. You didn't listen.
They're mutating. Sir, is the building on fire?
No, that's a false alarm.
Are you trying to panic New York City?
Absolutely not. So the monsters are real?
I didn't say that.
Gremlins 2. The new batch.
Now, was that civilized? No, clearly not. Fun, but in no sense civilized.